What's up, guys? Josiah here with EasyCaters.com. Just doing an afternoon review real quick. Got my list narrowed down to the movers of the day out of my main watch list here. Microsoft had a nice little opening range signal in the 10 and the 5. Had a 5 with an inside 5 on high churn. Didn't catch that one, but that one was a good one. Worked immediately. Zero pain kind of trade. Had a nice little pullback here in the afternoon. It wasn't super obvious, so I didn't end up catching that one. SE had a little bit of a 10-minute pullback trade here. You can see it better on the 5 where we had this pullback, started to trend back upward and had an inside pullback. And this one is where the volume stepped up to bring it to the new high. Roku. Oh, and this Microsoft, by the way, I had mentioned this one yesterday after the close and the afternoon review. I think where this type of setup I've seen a lot. Where I think I mentioned I call this the nope trade, where we've got this effort going, pushing down. We're trying to push down, but it's just not moving. That we're doing a lot of effort, a lot of volume being traded. Volume is churning, but we're not making much headway, and we get it essentially gets vulnerable to the opposite direction, and so that's what happened. So it triggered in, and yesterday it closed really strongly, triggering that setup. And I mentioned that it might go ahead and get straight to target there, and that's exactly what it did this morning. So I noticed that one when I was reviewing a minute ago. J and J. Don't really see a lot on this one. Had some volume coming in here that it had to work through some resistance, it looked like, but that's not really a trade setup for me. It was a little bit of a pullback trade late in the afternoon on AA Alcoa. Not what I generally look for. This was a pretty good one on Fitbit. Had a 30-minute churn bar at looks like 12:30. Didn't really show up on my cat's making a lot of noise here. A lot of the other time frames, but it showed up well on the 30, and that one worked pretty well. MRK. This is a trade that I actually did take today. And so there was one that I missed in the morning, which was this 30-minute high churn opening range. Indecision candle, I've mentioned these a few times, where a lot of times these will just work in whichever direction they break in. And so that one was a good one on the 30, the 20, the 15. Looks like the 10 had an inside 10, which is a really good risk to reward setup there. And then the 5 had an inside 5 right there, and another inside 5 right there. So when those eventually broke, worked really well. I got in on this pullback, and this is my favorite type of setup. As I mentioned, I've got a kind of a volume burst here, saying there's a level here, break up through it, put in some volume above to halt the move, pull back, and put in volume at that same level. It's kind of like this ping-ponging back and forth type of thing, and eventually it breaks upward. And so that's what I took, and I got that one for 2 Rs, and it would have worked for, it looks like, 6.5 Rs by the late afternoon there. Momo, see, we had some churn on this 15 opening range, dropped below, eventually regained the high here on a high churn bar, and kind of went sideways for a little bit, and then eventually broke as soon as we were able to churn through that resistance there. Didn't see a lot of setups on that one that I would be looking to take. Facebook had a high churn opening range on the 30, bottoming tail on the hourly. Had this inside 20, inside 15. So that one just kind of came into a, I guess a triangle there during the opening several minutes there. And then we had some churn volume down here at the low of that, and that led to this move. There was a pretty good entry that the volume confirmed here is this kind of double bottom broke out, but that's not really what I look for. Apple, I traded Apple this afternoon. Just my boring old ping pong trade here, as I call it. We got a 30-minute level put in here on high churn. It pulls back to the moving average and so forth, which doesn't really mean much except for that it's not extended so much anymore. And then we put in a high churn bar on the 30, the 20. We put in 2 on the 15. And so I took that I think I took it on the 20 minute. It was essentially the same trade on the 30. And so that one went about 2.5, looks like 3 R's there. So topped out just before getting to the 4 R mark. There was a little pullback trade here early in the morning on the 10 and the 5 with some volume churn to confirm it. Up to the highs here, pulled back, put in some churn again on this eBay. I think I was actually looking at this at one point. I can't remember. Maybe I missed this initial entry. Yeah, I think I was a little bit late getting to this one. BSX, nice high churn opening range candle, indecision candle on the hourly 30, 20, 15. So we had all these kind of sideways candles on high churn. And then, when you kind of break that, either the horizontal level or, maybe some type of, trend line break, you can kind of trade those or look for an inside entry on the smaller time frames. The nice pullback there on that 20. Not really seeing a lot on the lower time frame. You can kind of see, and this is, when a range like this breaks, I like to see volume on the very last candle, and that worked really well there. Kind of did this 1, 2, 3 continuation. Had a nice little pullback right there, but I didn't get much of anywhere before the end of the day. CNC, not much there. Couple little signals on that one. NVDA, I took a stop on this one today. Took a 1, 2, 3 setup that triggered in but didn't work. And then as soon as it stopped me out, it went and created a nice little pullback trade here with a really nice volume signal on the 10 and on the 5 here. So that one worked immediately. And we had a little pullback trade here. This wasn't trending yet, but it did give a nice pullback to the open and took off from there on volume. TXN, I think I'd seen, there was a volume burst on that one at the low, and it looks like there's a little bit of churn there, pullback churn here. That's not really what I looked for to trade myself, but those were some volume signals that did work. ATVI, most of the action was done early in the day, so not much there. A little bit of a 1, 2, 3 setup there on the open on the 10 minute. There's an inside high churn bar on the 20. This one was kind of a 10-minute pullback trade, but it didn't really give a good entry candle, or excuse me, a 15-minute there. 10-minute was here, and this is not really the look I want. I usually want to see the higher volume on the lowest end of the pullback, and this volume was kind of at the high. It did kind of step back up just a little bit at the very bottom, but just it wasn't super obvious, so not much there. A few good signals on this one. You can see here on the 10, that was a nice little churn. We broke out, tried to come back down, and it's basically saying no. The tape is saying no, we're not going down here, and it then immediately reverses back up. And opening range, we had churn come in on the inside this indecision candle here, and a little bit of a high churn opening on the 30-minute, it looks like, with an inside 15. AXP had some high churn on the open, 30, 20, 15, 10, 5. It broke above that and started ranging here, and then took off, pull back with a nice little volume signal there that led to this whole move. So that's really what I look for right there. That little, again, we got volume come in at the high, and then pulls back off, and volume comes in at the low. BABA, we have a really high churn volume candle on the open on all the time frames. Kind of do some inside range movement until we break out. Most any entry here would have worked. It looks like not seeing much else in the way of other volume signals to enter. D, not much there. So, this one was halted on, not halted, but we arrested the fall here on high churn volume, and eventually gave it tried to go lower, couldn't do it, put in some high churn and completely reversed there. So that was a nice little volume signal showing the reversal. CAG, just sideways. There were a few volume signals in there. This one caught the low here of this pullback. You can see it really good on the 5, and the 15 makes it pretty obvious there as well. And volume caught the low of this pullback at 9:30 reversal time, so that was good. JD, a couple of good signals there, 1, 2, 3 on the 10, and then we break out, pull back to the moving average here, and it's like we're trying to go lower. Puts in this churn bar, and that's a beautiful entry right there. And that kind of has the look that I like to see, which it's a little bit sloppier here, but we have volume at the high, pull back, volume at the low. That's what I like to see. Nice little volume burst at the open, broke out, pulled back, volume burst at the low again, and trended the rest of the morning. Starbucks, kind of sideways all day. A few signals there, not much that I would have been trading. Selge, there was some churn right in here that was interesting for a kind of a 1, 2, 3 type of setup, and then we had churn at the bottom here setting in the low. A little bit of a pullback there. Here's a nice 3-bar pullback, and you can see down here there was volume at the high. It dropped a little bit in the middle and went back up at the low. That's kind of what I look for. This is this probably worked for 2 hours, but it's not wasn't really that excellent of a trade, but it did looks like it did get you to 2 hours before it sold back off. It did stay in, it looks like, for the rest of the day until the very close of the day, it looks like. So that was decent. Morgan Stanley, a lot of volume noise on this chart, so I don't know what's going on with that one. Kind of a ping pong look here on the 5, volume churn on the open, puts in the high pivot and a low pivot here on high churn, back up to the highs, pull back. We put in some volume churn down here. It's pretty obvious on the 10, and that one would have worked for 2 hours. Looks like 3 hours there. And had another pullback here, and churn volume kind of put in this low here. Wasn't super pretty of a chart or anything, but those signals, you can kind of tell what they were saying. There's a little bit of a signal there on CT, or let's see, Foxa. No, what did I just miss here? Oh, right there. So DWDP had a nice little pullback volume at the very base of the pullback here, and then it took off. A couple little signals there, but not anything really clean. This is kind of just sideways, but we had volume coming in at these lows, saying that there was support there, and we took off, did a kind of a 1, 2, 3 here, and that led to the move for the afternoon. GM, inside candle here, that was nice. Tiny little pullback on the 5. This was like a downtrend that failed, so we had to push down here, and we couldn't do anything. It couldn't make it back down to the lows, and so it reversed and stopped out all these shorts and went for a run. LVS, a little bit of a pullback on the 5 there, so that was a little nice, but nothing super clean here. WY, nice little volume signal put in the low there, inside continuation. This was a nice little 10-minute on VIAB. And it looks like that's all I've got today. So I had 3 trades, 1 loser, 2 winners. It was a nice day. Took that Apple, I think it was the NVDA, and then the MRK are the 3 trades that I took for the day. And so anyway, hopefully that's helpful for your analysis, and we will talk to you again tomorrow. Thanks.